So I called this intuition because it just sounded like a really something that people in this audience would really like to hear about. And I have a new book coming out this fall with inner traditions called The Practical Shaman. And when I was writing it, it was a lot about my own initiation as how I became the practical shaman. Because practical shaman is really redundant. Practical, practical. Shamans were always very practical. They were concerned about the community, the health of the community, the food in the community, the livestock in the community, and making sure that there was longevity in the community. And so basically when you call yourself the practical shaman, you're calling yourself practical. And as some of you heard, I've been in the behavioral health field for the last 12 years as a marketing executive. And in July, my career ended that way. It was time. I knew it was coming, and I've written Winds of Spirit, came out 6 years ago, February 5th, with Hay House. It's an amazing book. It's not Balboa, it's Hay House. And they published it because this work hadn't been on the planet in ever since we've been around, because the winds go back about 15,000 years. And I'm gonna remind you of what the winds are. Let's start with that, okay? Everyone, unwrap your feet, put them planted down. And I want you to close your eyes and come here present to the room and hear the sound and see how it moves you. Now take a deep breath in. And as you exhale, don't you remember that sound of the wind? The other night in the desert when it was whipping so far and so fast and so furiously, I thought like, oh my God, the house is going to fall down. And then I checked in with my body. Who does this in the night when all of a sudden you get overwhelmed with and you can't sleep? And I checked in and it was like, what's going on? And I noticed I was in fear. And if you think about fear, where do you hold that in your body? I was holding it right in my heart. And it was a moment of reckoning, because I'm there like, I walk with the wind. And as soon as I said that, I walk with the wind and the wind has my back, it dissipated. And so it's kind of interesting that I'm talking about intuition today, because for years, and I'm seeing it out there, you see a lot of it, people running between psychics and wanting this one to tell you this and that one to tell you that and that one to tell you that. That was me. I'd go to these things and I'd probably go to 3 or 4 different people and spend a couple $100 wanting you to tell me what I was going to do next in my life. Who's been there? We've all been there, right? Or, that conversation that you want to have with your dead ancestor. When I just told you that story, those who got here early, about I had the conversation with a dead ancestor 30 years later, all on my own. That spirit has our back. And when I found the wind, it was quite by surprise. I really thought I was writing a book, a coaching book for my coaching clients. And I thought, well, wind makes such a great metaphor. You know, Mary Poppins blew in on an east wind and left on a west wind, and Sherlock says to Holmes, there's an east wind blowing, like the one that's blowing through right now and through the United States. And I thought, like, well, this is a wonderful metaphor. Then I found 150 wind gods. And I thought, well, that's really curious. Then I started to put them onto like a map in my bathroom, and they were following the trajectory of how we re-evolved after the comet hit the planet and we went through an ice age, and how humanity resurfaced. So it's like this old wisdom coming back. And I thought, well, that's interesting that everyone has a wind god and they all have different jobs. It wasn't like, you know, the wind god over here in the Southwest had the same job as the Santa Ana winds, and that the one down in Peru was doing the same thing. They were, depending on where you lived, the winds spoke to people in different ways. And I was just, my curious mind kept going like, well, this is really curious, this is curious. And then I had this client, and she said, well, why don't you call up one of those winds? So I called up the wind with my whistle. She was in New York, I was in California, and this wind comes in. The door opened, the door slammed. And I'm there like, and she's in New York having a very similar experience of the wind. And meanwhile, I had discovered that Holy Spirit, wind. Ruach, wind. Nirvana, no wind. Om, the sound of the wind passing through things. So that as we developed, when we moved from the outside to the inside, we lost our connection with the wind. Like when I called it in today, how many people are like, oh yeah, I know that. Well, in Old English, when they built these houses, they built wind eyes. That's what they were called, wind eyes. So we were inside looking through these glass windows at the wind. And something happened at the same time, which I've learned through my travels in Peru. And, you know, I've had all the initiations and things like that. That's about the same time that when we moved from the outside to the inside, that we started to need an intermediary to tell us what we were experiencing. That's when we started building churches, and we had to go there. You know, if you go to Peru and you look at the temple, the church roofs, the Caro, they thought like, oh, more God, not less God. This is going to be more God when the Christians came in. So when they were painting the ceilings of the Catholic churches in Peru, they're chewing cocoa leaves. They brought their tradition, put it in with theirs. They didn't realize that all of a sudden it was going to be one God, not all the gods. And so then the more I went with the winds, so in this book, there's actually 32 wind gods. And the deck of cards, I found 32 more. And so I told you I had 150. I couldn't find information on them all. But one of the things that was really curious about how spirit drives us is that there's winds in here that 5 years before I didn't find in my research. Like there's this wind called Wairatata from Peru, and there's another one, a creator wind, that I found were really located at the equator. And they're winds that are about this time that we're in, that the Quechua call the Pachacuti, the turning over of the world. But they weren't ready to reveal themselves to us then. And so you might wonder what all this has to do with intuition. Well, I was telling you, I was spending all of those money on psychics. But then when I started to have the wind, I didn't need any information from the outside anymore. I know that sounds really crazy, like that the wind told me. Yeah, the wind told me. And how I knew that was true was I kept having these little experiences, and you're going to have an experience with the wind today, was that my editor, I have a really great developmental editor, She's, she's several New York Times best-selling editor. She holds me to a very high bar. And she wasn't liking how I was describing the cardinal winds. Now you have to remember, I had a lot of shamanic training. I'd spent years in the Lakota Sweat Lodge. I thought I had these winds down, right? But I couldn't figure out how we were orientating to these cardinal winds. And I think once you understand that you all navigate from your own wheelhouse and that these winds are, my north and your north might be two very different norths, but they might have all of the same information in it, but it wouldn't be, I can't come over and sail your ship. So that was one of the problems that I used to have with going to intuition and getting psychics, is that sometimes if the psychic wasn't clear enough, did you ever have this? They projected all of their stuff, all of their information, all of their hurts, all of their wounds. And trust me, when I was learning to heal, I made a lot of mistakes like that too. Now I just, I stay away from those sticky subjects that are my own. Because when we become clear vessels, we get the information we need. And if you happen to be blessed and you get the information somebody else needs, even better. But the truth is this work today is about accessing your own guidance. One of the best ways to access your own guidance is to be rooted on the earth. It's so easy for people to want to go to other planets and other outer spaces and other places, but the truth is this is your Cadillac. You're having an earth experience, and I really believe that it's best navigated when you're navigating from your body, planted on the earth. Now, I'm a shaman, so you might go to the ascension class and they may tell you, hey, no, you don't have to be in your body, just fly over here and you're good. But one of the things that really bothers me about that is I hear a lot of times like, well, I was out in, I don't know, the Akashic Records and beyond, there's a big library and I was out there. And how long were you there? How'd you get back? One thing about intuition is knowing the route that you took to get there. Knowing your own route. How are you grounded? How do you receive information? My new book, The Practical Shaman, has this whole section on how do I receive information. Because first of all, we have to know how we receive information. So first of all, how many of you, close your eyes and just think about, let me blow the whistle and see, I'm going to pull a card. Let's do it this way. I'm going to pull a card and I'm going to have you close your eyes and let's see if we can come up with what this is together based on the way that you receive information. I'm not telling you what it is. So I'm just going to play the whistle quick while you kind of drop in, take a deep breath, take a few deep breaths. And I pulled a card and I want this group to be able to come together to figure out what the message on that card is, okay? So think about this card. I'm thinking about it. How many of you hear a message? Raise your hand. Okay, someone heard a message. How many see things? Oh, lots of seers in the room. How many feel? How many know? I'm a knower. How many taste? How many smell? We got a smeller in the room, good. No tasters in the room. I can sometimes taste, but I was a chef, so I have a refined sense of smell and taste. How many, did I say here? I think I got them all, yeah. So we all receive information in different ways. So just call out some of the ideas of what you got about this card that I pulled?
Mountains.
Mountains, okay.
Prosperity.
Prosperity.
Strength.
Strength.
Transcendence.
Green. Okay.
Illumination.
What did you say?
Illumination.
I didn't hear you.
Illumination.
Illumination. Okay. Uh-huh.
Dolphins.
Hell.
Dolphins.
A dolphin. Did I hear a dolphin?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Wow.
Did I tell you?
Yeah.
All right.
That's
Well, I should have given you a little heads up. It's a wind oracle. So I guess, right, so we've got
leaves and trees.
leaves and trees, that's true, but it was waving wheat. And it's the card of intermittent winds, the card of empathy, and it's about responding like a gentle breeze. So did anyone get feel like a little bit of empathy, a little bit of gentleness, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, the other day I was blowing the whistle and I saw this thing, so it was calming. Let's try it again. Now that you know the rules, let's see if we can do it again. Now you know it's wind, okay? And you might, if we get a cross-cultural wind, you might want to figure out like which wind we've got going on here. Let me see. I'll give you a clue, okay? Well, we got another dynamic, which is kind of interesting. So the dynamics are like the winds that are coming at you, the winds that aren't blowing, the winds that we have. So I'm going to give you another dynamic. I'm going to tell you that part of it, all right? And so close your eyes again. Now I want you to actually, since it's a dynamic and you know it's a dynamic, I'd like you to experience the wind coming towards you on this one, all right? What kind of wind is moving towards you? All right, let's try that again. What you got?
Arctic wind.
Oh, it was a cold wind. I like that. We needed a little cold air in this room. It was hot when I moved in here. I had to like turn the air off. So I'm glad you feel it. What other we at?
Cleansing.
Cleansing. It was a cleansing wind, wasn't it?
I felt a strong howling wind.
It was a strong howling wind, yes.
Perseverance.
Perseverance, yes. That's also.
Chaotic.
Ah, that's interesting that you say chaotic. Who said chaotic? Very interesting. I'm working on I'm teaching a shift network class on a 7-week course this spring, and I'm working on a field journal, a windwork field journal. And of course my editor, I'm driving into LA today, she's there like, well, look up a bird watching journal. And I'm thinking, well, that's really interesting because I was going inward, but then we need to go outward too if we're talking about nature, right? So it just brings that inward and outward looking at both. But the fact that you said chaotic, I have this wind intensity scale in my book. Like how am I doing, like, so say the area of my finances. Are they chaotic? So the wind that I had is the headwind. And that's on the scale. That's the wind when things are out of balance and a little chaotic in my life. So a headwind is when that wind is coming against us and we're feeling that Arctic cold, that thing's moving, that little bit of shuffling. But imagine, okay, this kind of feels a little bit like, oh, she's got cards and we're playing a guessing game. But imagine if you started to look at your life and you walked outside and you experienced what wind is blowing. What is this wind telling me? Do I even pay attention to what's going on in the wind? And it's really kind of this thing, if you think about it, all right, if the Catholics took wind to be Holy Spirit, and the Jewish people took wind to be Ruach, and, you know, the Vedic had the wind, and the Om is the wind, what do you think they were trying to say? They're trying to tell you that spirit is invisible, it's a force of nature, you can feel it, you can feel the results of it, but you can't always see it. And imagine, so I take a wind walk. I'm going to teach you a wind walk exercise. A wind walk is when you go to the door, and if you're stuck inside, you go to the window, okay? That's why I'm always looking for rooms with doors and windows and stuff, and you know, I'd have them all open and the wind blowing through. I was doing this wedding ceremony for someone once, and I called in the directions, and we were up in Desert Hot Springs, and again, that same experience that I was telling you about in New York, when I called to the east wind, the door opened. When I called to the west wind, the water across the pool started, they told me this afterwards because I was in a ceremony. The water started going that way, and then the palm trees started coming over this way. Imagine if you had that kind of relationship with nature, that, well, this conference would be out of business quick. Because you'd be like, oh, I'll just go pull a wind oracle, and I don't mean that, because, you know, we all do that. We see that one, oh, is that one going to tell me something I need to know? I mean, we're curious. We want to know. We're knowers. So this wind walk, though, will always give you the answer you need. This is what you do. You have a question? Let's do a little wind walk in our minds, okay? So ask yourself a question. Simple one. You know, should I go to the Indian restaurant or should I get a burger down in the lobby? You know, something that's answerable in this space. Not, am I going to meet the man of my dreams at this conference?
The ratios aren't in our favor.
Trust me. Somebody I know met the man of her dreams last year at this conference, and we were all like, no! So we don't, you know, but people have met here, so I don't want to take that away. I've heard of there's some lovely relationships that have formed from this very conference, and I applaud them, because you never know where you're going to meet that person, or if there is such a person, because there might be multiples. But we're going to take a wind walk, and we're going to ask a simple question. Does everyone have a question that they want to ask? All right. Again, close your eyes, unwrap your feet. Remember, I'm the practical shaman. I want you grounded on the earth. I'm going to invite you to imagine yourself in your favorite place in nature. Does everyone have that favorite place in nature? And this question that you asked yourself, I want you to call to the wind. Actually, you're not going to call to the wind. You're going to wait for the wind. You're going to ask that question, and then wait until you get a sign from the wind. Now, take a deep breath and imagine yourself just walking along. If you're in a path in the woods, you're walking down the path. If you're at a beach, you feel the sand beneath your feet. If you're walking up a mountain trail, Look around. And remember when we were just talking about how you interpret information, how you receive information. Feel the wind caressing you, pushing you back, pushing you forward. Where's the wind in this walk? And once you've identified where you're walking and how the wind's supporting you, I invite you to ask that question again. And look around for your answer. It could be a bird in the tree singing to you, or a leaf on the path, a feather. It could be a sound. It could be a taste, a smell. And when you're ready, turn around and walk back down that path and come back here into the room when you're ready. And say thank you to the wind. And if this is a new experience for you, say, hey, I'm really glad to make this new friend in this new way of receiving some information. And remember, we pulled a wind of empathy, and we pulled a wind of obstacles. So I will be really curious to hear about the questions you asked and some of the answers you might have received.
I asked for my man and the wind brought man.
That's how it works.
I'm joking. Before you were here, I just had to.
That's really how it does work. I love that. You're pegged. That's great. Thank you. Anyone else get a very specific wind answer or an answer? Yes.
It's not crazy deep or anything, but I'm trying to figure out what to get my grandma and my dad for their 65th and 90th birthday, and they gave me the answer. So.
Great. What are something good you want to share with us?
It was one of those electronic, you put the photographs, like it just plays a bunch of photos from your album, so just to put right on their, like at their house.
So did you see it, or did you hear it, or how did you?
The idea just came. Yeah.
So let's talk about that. That is such a really great thing about intuition, that you know that the idea just came. Sometimes the idea just comes and we just don't pay attention to it. We call those missed opportunities. When we see the idea and we ignore it. Are you aware of, on your own scale, of when an idea comes? Because when I say, this is me, now I'm pretty tuned in, so I saw that electronic picture. I'm going to walk out the door, and sure enough, somebody's out there is going to be selling one. It happens, once you get aligned to your nature, it happens really fast. Yes?
So he doesn't know it, but I listed mine yesterday on OfferUp.
Do you see? Is that's just how it really works. But see, we're really all connected, and we're all connected through the wind. Because think about it, we're blowing out a nice fresh wind from this room because it's way better in here now than it was when it was moldy up the last, before I turned the heat down. That same wind is going to go around the fair, and just because you are asking these questions, you're going to run into the right people, you're going to see the right things, you're going to meet that right psychic who's going to tell you where your true love is. I mean, it just works that way. The key is to really understand how you perceive your information. I have a rating scale for me. when I just know something, and I know that I just pay attention to it or not, and then something shows up to reinforce it really quickly. Who has that? Does that? However, sometimes, and not all the time, I will get a loud, resounding voice. Anyone get the voice? The first time I ever heard the voice, I remember I was in my living room, it was maybe 20 years ago, and this voice said to me, it was a Sunday morning, no, it might have been Thanksgiving because I had a catering that day. It said, Dash has to go so you can grow spiritually. I look over and there's my cat on this rainbow paper that I had done a despacho the day before, which is a Peruvian prayer ceremony. There's the cat under the table, and I'm there like, well, that was, I blew it off. Like, that didn't just happen. How many times do you have a voice and you just blow it off? That night I come home and my cat was missing. Oh, I still could cry. My cat taught me how to love. That cat particularly. I love my other cats, but this cat taught me how to love. When it used to be like I lived in what's the use? Like what's the use? What's the use? One night I was in what's the use, and for some reason this poor cat started fetching bottle caps. Kept bringing them back to me on the bed, because the fact that she did that got me out of this what's the use? There's no point of living here. I'm out. I mean, that was kind of self-pitying, but it was really a mood that I went to every month. And I don't go there anymore, but my cat saw me through that. She traveled cross country with me. And so for her to go was like one of the hardest things I ever had to go through in my life. And anyone who's lost that first love, it knows that pain. When I hear a voice now, I know, do it. Next time I heard that voice, it said, go take Anka to lunch. She's not going to be here much longer. Well, now this is 20 years later. I know when I hear that voice that I call up Anka and they're like, hey, let's go to lunch. I didn't know that she had 4-stage stomach cancer because she didn't know it, and she was going to be dead in 3 weeks. So you have to find a way of rating your own information. Not everyone hears things. Some people see things really visually, and I see a lot of things visually, like when I do, I've done some journey work, and I've done plant medicine work, and I've seen some things in those kind of situations where, like this whole piece of father work I was telling you about who were here earlier, it was like, I left a job last summer, and it was just like all of a sudden I had worked really hard for these guys for 6 years, and I never heard from them again. And I said, like, is there anything unfinished here? Sure enough, a few weeks ago I found out what was unfinished was that one of my bosses had all the same characteristics, same energy as my dad. And this whole fathering piece came up. So that kind of intuition comes in with unfinished business. So there's all kinds of ways of accessing this deeper intuition in you. So let's go back to our wind walk. Did anyone else have an interesting experience?
I kind of did.
Okay.
So the first card that you pulled, the word going through my head was chaos, and then the next time, somebody like 2 rows back said chaotic. And so that was just, it was kind of a weird coincidence.
Oh yeah, that you got the chaos before I pulled the card. Because that was the next card.
Yeah.
I like that. So precognition. How many people get precognitive messages?
Well, apparently I do.
So we don't always trust them. So for years, I have this really good close friend, I would get these messages. And I don't have really good memory. I don't because I stay in the present a lot, so I don't remember a lot of things. And she'd always say to me, did you write that on your white card? And this is a really good exercise for you, those of you who are learning to really trust your intuition more, is get a box of index cards, or however you keep them, and every time you get this precognition, voice, anything, you just write it down on your white card. And then when you put it down on your white card, you file it away in a box. So then when it comes up a few years, later, you've got, it's kind of self-proof. Sometimes nobody else needs proof, but we need self-proof. When I was doing these cards, I think I was telling you that the editor, I told her she was being really hard on me, and so I was going to pull out the cardinal directions. Yeah, I'm just going to take those cardinal directions. Imagine this. I'm going to take those cardinal directions right out of the book. That's how I was going to deal with it. So I'm a businesswoman, I told you. I don't hide that. So I decided, it would be a really great idea to make little win cards, business cards. So now I have 150 strips of, because I've had all those wins, 150 strips of wins printed on cards. We're talking 150 white strips in a box. And they're like, well, let me pull out 4 cards to find out which card should go on the business cards. Okay? What do you think I got? No? I got north. And remember, I'm taking this out of the book. Then I pull out of 150 cards, south. Then I go reach in the box again. There's now 148 slips of paper. I get west. I didn't even pull the 4th card because at that point it was like, all right, so you're not taking those out of the book. And that's another way of getting information when you're not trusting or you think you're going to head in a different direction and then spirit shows you just the opposite. Who knows that story? Yeah, do you want to share? Is it a good one?
Oh, I have lots of good ones, yeah.
You got
My question for you would have been like, because I'm so freaking stubborn,
Uh-huh.
I have 3 years of intuition things that have popped up, like the white cards.
right.
What is your suggestion on getting out of your own way kind of thing? Like,
So, for me, what really worked, and this is, sometimes I had this, she was a Mapuche shaman who I was studying with, and I carted her to the country club that I was the food and beverage director at years ago, and she was walking across in her Mapuche garb across this very high-end country club, screaming at the top of her lungs, Renee, what are you doing here? This is not who you are, and this is not how you belong. I said to her, well, once I can heal myself, I'll start healing others. And she just looked at me, it's just about this tall, and I mean, I knew I was in trouble. She said, you are going to heal when you start working with others. So when you start doing I just got the chills. Really, who else just got the chills? When I start doing those readings for other people, then some of those intuition guidances on my cards, I start to see. People call me up 10 years later. It was in Mexico last year, and this woman said, do you know you told me I was going to have twins? I said, no, I hadn't, no recollection that I told you were going to have twins. Yeah, I got my twins. I mean, I can't tell you how many people, when I was working at a spa, that I would tell them, I don't know what garbage comes out of my mouth sometimes. And 10 years later, they would be telling me, oh, that came true. Do you remember when you told me? No, I don't remember it at all. Thank God, because you'd be carrying all that along. So my suggestion is to start practicing with other people and taking some of that stuff that's on your cards and actually giving people, not unsolicited advice, but, hey, would you like a little reading? I'm testing out my intuition. I want to see how this goes. And cards like mine are really safe because they're not like an upside down hangman. They tell you connection, magic. They're really a safe way in to a deeper conversation. And I didn't.
one more question, because you're a businesswoman as well.
Yes.
And when you have that intuition, you get the messages,
Uh-huh.
the interpretation of the messages. sometimes you're like in argument with the message and you're like, that doesn't sound great, or like you had that, but you're like, oh, I'm not gonna say that, you know? But you're just like in yourself, in the conversation of,
That becomes discernment.
okay.
You know, I also got the email a couple years ago from the woman who she said that I ruined her life because I told her something 15 years ago that changed her trajectory. And so it really becomes discernment. And a lot of times now I'll wait. You know, it's a lot, it feels really good when you can say, I told you so, but sometimes it's better when you can just say, I knew that. You know, that didn't ring true for me. And when my last job, I really felt like I was the steering of the ship, like the crone in the kingdom who was keeping the spiritual integrity aligned. That's what I felt like my job was. And so I didn't have to tell people things anymore. So there's a degree about when you're asked, I tell people. When I'm not asked, I hold it to myself. And if it's a life or death thing, like go have lunch with Anka, she's not going to be here much longer, I do it. Do you feel like you've missed out on something by not following your intuition?
Oh no, I got a kick in the butt now, so I'm good now.
Good,
Yeah.
good. Anyone else is there like we have a couple more minutes. Anyone else have a situation? Let me just tell you, if you'd like to know more, you can get on my mailing list here. Let me just share that around. I'd love you to be in my 7-week shift network class. I'm going to pass those around.
Do you have a booth?
I do, down 701. Come see me. If you love the wind whistle, I have a few wind whistles down there. I have a free oracle reading on my website. So go over to thepracticalshaman.com and you can pull 3 free cards. And you can also, get the cards. If you're at a transition in your life, one of the things that I've been loving to do is, because I do these wind walks, I've been taking people on wind walks. Last year I went to the Cotswolds. The year before I went to the Camino. This year I'm going to Peru at the end of October. I haven't been back to Peru in many years, and it's time. I didn't like what we were doing in Peru. I didn't like that we were taking their things and imposing our things on them and ruining their culture. But for some reason the wind is calling me back, and I think it might be that new wind I just told you about. So I have walks. This is for the Healing Touch Society. This class came out of my walk, another wind walk, to the Cotswolds. It's called Gates and Gatekeepers. And it's on March 7th, and it's an 8 to noon kind of class, 4-hour class. So that's up here. And the free oracle reading, if you're going to forget it, come grab a card. But come down to my booth, 701, on your way to Samosas. I'm right on the right. And thank you so much. Oh, where do I live? So I just sold my house in Palm Desert after 30 years. And speaking of intuition, I had to do a lot of work to release that house because the mountain held me. Another chapter in my book is about how place can hold us, and a place doesn't want us to leave. That was my relationship with Palm Desert. I bought a new house up on Whidbey Island north of Seattle last summer. After I built that's a great story. You should come to my booth and I'll tell you a story about how I built the house, thought it was my forever house, walked into a house last summer, and it turned out to be my home. And the woman before me wrote a book called When Spirit Called My Name. And in her book, she said that her teacher called her Daughter of the Four Winds the one who rides in concert with the one who rides the winds. And talk about getting chills, because I was getting laid off that week. I had to convince my bosses to keep me on the payroll 3 more weeks so I could close. So it wasn't good timing, but I had to listen because that was my forever home.
Where's it at?
It's on Whidbey Island in Freeland. Do you know Whidbey?
What state?
Oh, Washington. It's a little bit north of Seattle on this little island where a bunch of cool people like David White lives. I never see him. But I know he's around the corner, and I wave to his house when I go by.
You talk about
It was really, truthfully, by surprise. I was up on Whidbey Island. I decided to take a walk one day. I go, and this Douglas fir, of all things, started to talk to me. I'm like, I don't talk to trees. And all of a sudden, this tree said, "You're going to write a book about the wind." And I'm like standing here, the wind's starting to blow, the ocean's out, you know, the harbor's out there. And I look up at the sky and I said, "You want me to write a book about what?" People hate the wind. And I'm supposed to write a book, bring in a tradition, find followers, and this is supposed to be my path of service? And it took me a minute. I thought when I got the Hay House book, I thought I was going to be famous. You know, Hay House, wow. But what I didn't realize is nobody knew for the wind. The publisher knew that nobody written about the wind, but she forgot to tell me that it was going to take me 10 years to get enough people around me to have the wind, so that when I, you know, do my shift network class in a couple of months, that I'll have 400 students. It took what it took. It was a surprise. So if something is that far out, calling you, know that it's probably spirit. Thank you. Great question. Thank you all.